Let me start off straight with the question, since Alex has already spoken about some of the numbers there. One of the reports said that the capex in FY23 was around 7.5 lakh crores which came in, and it's a 21% jump. Now, there is a view on the street that this capex is similar to 2003 to 2008, and it's a beginning of that cycle. Madhu, I want to start with you first. How do you see this capex cycle going, and is it similar to the 2003-2008 cycle?
First of all, thank you for having me. I would say this cycle will surely be better than what we experienced between 2003 and 2000. And I would emphasize that qualitatively, this cycle will be better. Because if you're going by the history, if you saw the kind of capex which was being funded, there was clearly exuberance at that time. The lending was very easy, capital availability was phenomenal, capital markets were doing well, and you've seen what kind of NPLs happened post that capex cycle between 2013-14 and right up to 2018-19, right? So even though quantitatively you could relate, but qualitatively this capex cycle will be far superior. And there is data point. If you look at any capex cycle, actually requires 4 C's. First, capacity utilization. Second, cost of capital. Third, capital availability. And fourth, confidence. If you look at it, India has done remarkably well in the last 4-5 years to get all of this here together. So I feel very optimistic. And this time around, there are stark differences between the capex cycle in this time and the one which you are alluding to. Like at that time, private sector effectively was leading. So 70% of the capex at that time happened from private sector and 30% was government. This time around, it is exactly opposite. 70% is contributed by the government and private sector is still lagging. Let me give you one data point which I was reading. The best way to look at the capex cycle in what is the depreciation to your overall asset. So that is still 1.6%, the depreciation being provided. In the peak, it was 7.5%. So still there is a long way, I would say. I am very sure a private sector capex in times to come will start to reflect the solidarity which I am talking.
Sanjeev, you've been traveling across the country. You're present across segments. Are you seeing that pickup of capex coming in, especially from the private sector? As Madhu said, 70% coming from PSUs, 30% from private sector. But now we are seeing, the pickup of private sector capex coming in. And you see this as a broad-based capex cycle which is coming in. Any geographies where we are seeing this capex building up?
Oh, first of all, thanks for having me. And I agree with Madhu. 20 years back, the capex cycle that we had, it had very different construct, both globally as well as what happened in India. But right now, if you see the conditions that existed at that time, they are absolutely different, both geographically, also what's happening in India. Now, India, if you really see the markets, earlier, 20 years back, there would be only 4 or 5 segments we used to drive the capex, and that too in very large projects. And as Madhu mentioned that, those used to go in power, steel, and some large, core sector projects, and they resulted in NPAs later on. But now, we are looking at, from our perspective, we are looking at about 23, 24 market segments, which are very wide and deep across the geography of the country. And some of them are the companies which are listed, but a lot of businesses are happening in the private side. And they don't necessarily need not be very large, but there are the size, the number is quite high. So you can see the distribution of investment is across the geography in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities.
And if you look at the players who are involved in the capex, is there a differentiation in terms of the capex being brought down by the players vis-a-vis what we saw in 2003, 2008? What kind of players are now looking at capex?
So the construct has changed, as we said. See, in 2003, around that time, you'll see we had the 3G launched, and everybody was talking about a killer application they require on the phone before 3G can be relevant for the people. Everybody was very excited. But that means that time that digital era was not there. So we never used to talk about large data centers at that time, because Google and Facebook types of the services were just they were just forming, and internet was in its nascent state. But now what you can see is the data center, for example, globally as well as now in India, is scaling up. So that's a new segment in itself. And last 2022, I think we have put together data centers worth close to 650 megawatt. You put another 1 year, it becomes 1300 megawatt. So that's the kind of a multiplier effect you have. And if you take it forward 2030, you will have $23 billion invested only in the data center as an investment space. And that's perhaps the biggest real estate game in the town. So that's one construct, and there are many other segments as well.
Adu, you agree with that? The construct of the capex and the players have changed and the sectors have changed, and it is sustainable.
Clearly, that's what I was mentioning. Last time, maybe the private sector was leading, and within the private sector, 60% of the capex were done by the top 10 corporate houses. But if you see today, that number is maybe merely like 35%, which is constituted by top 10 corporate players. Also, there are a lot of new sectors which have come up, and also it is happening because of disruption. Like, take for instance, clean energy. That was only a word 20 years back.
Yeah.
Today, clean energy is reality. We can't, the fact that we face such enormous heat in this season itself is clearly indicating that what is the times to come, what kind of global warming we are going to have. So the clean energy, now you and I can't even estimate what kind of capex will be required. But what we are able to see in the ground, right? Everyone, and these are power plants. When we were doing in the last cycle, a power plant took 6-7 years because we were doing a thermal. Today you can make a power plant in 6 months. Like if you do solar or if you do wind, you can actually start producing power in 6 months. So there, like Mr. Sharma spoke about data center. So I think the capex is extremely broad-based, and it is also happening because of the disruption which is happening around the world and specifically in India.
Sanjeev, if you look at the trends here, there is a capex which is coming over this energy transition, right? Means that's what what Madhu is also indicating towards. So energy transition capex is going to be the bigger play going forward.
It is. Since you started with the premise of comparing 20 years back. So what was happening 20 years back was in Qatar, state of Qatar, massive capacity for gas was being put in place. UAE, Saudi, and you go to different parts of the world, a lot of investments were taking in the oil and gas project. At that time, about $9 trillion, And you had that as the energy play at that time. Now, the same company, the large oil and gas companies, because of this climate action and the sustainability demanded by the investors, the core of their strategy is energy transition. So whatever cash flows they are generating, half of it gets allocated for maintaining the assets they have in the fossil fuel side, and rest of it gets allocated on the energy transition. So we want to move away from the fossil side, want to get into the renewables power side, which could be the generating energy with wind, solar, and also getting into the electric vehicle space, so that they want to make sure they are the drivers in the energy transition. And these are the large companies that they have a lot of cash flows, because the fossil fuel is still generating a lot of cash flows, and those are getting transmitted into the transition, in the energy transition space.
Are you seeing the cash flows getting, used up for energy transition in India as well, in that sense?
Okay, you can see the largest players in the oil and gas space. They have they have declared very large ambitions on the renewable side. So that speaks for it.
Adu, you're wearing an investment hat. Tell me opportunities which are there to play in this capex cycle and how you play that opportunity.
It's a buffer out there. You have to choose. As my guru and mentor used to tell, that it's a buffet out there. You eat whatever you can digest, but just remember, you don't overeat. So I think there are plethora of ways by which you can play it. My favorite theme is obviously the infrastructure side of capex, and also this China plus one. Given that this PLI, in my opinion, when we talk maybe 10, 15 years down the line, would have been the biggest game changer for India. Because what people are not realizing, by giving maybe 3 lakh crore rupees of PLI incentive spread over 14, 15 sectors, the government will generate 60 lakh crore rupees of revenue in this time, right? If you calculate GST under 60 lakh crore, whatever number which you want to assume, it will be multiple of what they're actually being able to give. Forget the income tax, forget the benefit which will get by job creation and all. And this will enable that a lot of industries which were kind of uncompetitive in India, let's say mobile manufacturing.
Yeah.
In the earlier panel it was being spoken. Now the EBITDA margin typically for a mobile manufacturer in China is 3%. Right? Here if you're giving 5% incentive on the top line, of course I will be competitive. Right? So the PLI change itself is going to be a big thing to watch for. So manufacturing, which is specifically China plus one, and infrastructure-led capex.
How do you look at the companies going for capex from a balance sheet point of view? If I were to compare from a 2003-2008 period to now, how are Indian companies placed with respect to balance sheet?
Phenomenally well. And that's again taking a data point, the peak of debt to equity, I'm saying 2010 something, it was 85%. Today that number is 54%. Right? So corporate in India, when we are also talking to people across, obviously through our investment we talk, corporates in India significantly delivered. और मैं आपको बोलता हूँ, आजकल लोन लेने वाले को लोन देने वाले से ज्यादा डर, बिकॉज इतने सारे लोग जेल में चले गए ना, देने वाले भी और लेने वाले. So that whole culture, in my opinion, has changed. Borrowers have become far more responsible than at least what I have seen in my career. Even when I go to Delhi and meet real estate players, they also want to be debt free. So obviously corporate balance sheets have improved very, very meaningfully in the last 10 years. The banking balance sheets have improved. When did you hear a public sector bank has provided 75% of their gross NPL as provision coverage? I've never seen these numbers in my career. So both bank, household, as well as the corporate balance sheet are in a far better shape, according to me, than it has ever been. Forget the last cycle.
Sanjeev, you interact with many companies across sectors. Do you concur with what that balance sheet is not an issue at this point in time, and it's more, the direction in which they want to put the capex?
Yeah, I think that's true because it also reflects in your receivables, right? Earlier, the receivable cycles used to be very long, whether now it's a small player or it's a medium-sized player or a large player. When you deliver your services and products, you get paid on time. So that shows in your cash flows and the receivable cycle.
And for a change, even government is paying on time.
Absolutely.
And you see a lot of small and medium enterprises now getting involved in this kind of capex?
They are. You should know that underlying, there are two types of capex which is visible. One is the so-called motherhead plants wherein some integration takes place. But then you have a lot of value chain providers who provide the machinery, equipment into these things. Earlier, what used to happen, say many years ago, a lot of stuff used to get imported as a full machine. Now what you have is that our entrepreneurs in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, they have absorbed those technologies and they have a capacity and capabilities with the younger generation to put those things together and also put quite a bit of digitalization on it. So quite a few sophisticated machines are now built here, which used to be imported. So quite a bit of value chain, which was imported, has spread into the manufacturing sector or in the private sector. So that again is another area where the new market has formed.
And you see that more often in tier 2, 3 and 4 tier cities where, this kind of innovation or this kind of, expenditure is happening.
Yes, I think cities like Mumbai, Chennai, you do have large corporates who could do the capital allocation into large plants and large capex. But then it makes sense to be present in tier 2, tier 3 cities because the cost of land, cost of setting it up, cost of what you pay to the labor, cost what you pay to the white collar job is much more competitive in those areas. So people are smart. I think that's how they are setting themselves up. And more people who have good corporate experiences, they have started their own jobs. People are doing the integration jobs, which used to be earlier you had to get the experts from overseas. So all this value added is getting done inside the country.
Are you seeing larger players moving to these cities because of the costs involved to reduce the cost and, get more product?
So larger players always moved where the raw materials were there. So you may have an office in a large city, but you always go where it's easy to bring the raw materials and also easy to send those finished goods out, and you have the access to the labor. So yeah, I think that keeps happening. Yes.
So about to come to the electrification
Right.
journey that we are taking, which is taking place in the transportation sector. You think it's a huge one. Finally, moving to passenger cars as well.
So I think electrification journey, as I said, if you are in Europe, Central Europe, you by default people take train to travel 4-5 hours distance. So I think this railways, the new railways, as Madhu said about Vande Bharat, people will take these short distances by these trains as you put 4 or 5 years and more trains on it, and then longer distances will be the planes. Now, when it comes to electrification and the EV side of it, that's another story which is developing. You can very clearly see that on the two-wheeler side, that transition has taken quite quickly. Three-wheeler side also, I think quite a good movement is there, and especially when you have the fleets wherein you have, say, the cars which are provided as taxi service. I think there again the pickup is very good. Like say you have a service in New Delhi called Blue Smart, which is dedicated as an EV player, and they offer very good services and they are ramping up. But when it comes to passenger cars, I think that will require public infrastructure to do the charging. We are in that charging space. We can see movement is taking place there, but I think it will be a journey to be done in that area.
What kind of opportunity you see, Madhu, in that electrification journey, especially in the cars and auto speed?
No, it's not yet begun, Sanjeev. I think the amount of combustion vehicles which needs to be replaced by electric vehicles, and as it again comes to that point of carbon neutrality, it's not a choice anymore. It's by compulsion that you have to do it, or it will get done, right? So if you see yourself, you even go in a city like Mumbai, how many cars can you identify which are electric vehicles, and how many cars are the old combustion vehicles? The answer is in front of you, that I can't even identify one car out of 100 which are like electric vehicle. So agar ye Mumbai ka haal hai, so you go to any smaller city. So it is just beginning, It's a really long way to go. And there will be various ways to play it in the stock market, and not a lot of listed companies which are there right now. But I am sure a lot of companies which are either ancillary or into battery or into electric vehicle, a lot of variety of companies will come.
No, you spoke about the battery and spoke about data centers as a new area. Battery storage is something which is emerging. How big an opportunity is it?
So one has to, before we size up an opportunity, you have to look into the underlying trend, which I think is being driven in India and by the Indian government. We want to move away from fossil fuels, right? That's the underlying trend, because 85% of the fossil fuels are imported, and we don't want to keep shipping money to other countries to import our energy. So I think that's one. Energy transition is being at the core of whatever is happening in this space. So what's happening is then the renewable energy, I think we have made quite a leap in that area, especially in the solar energy, followed by wind and hydel. And also now the hydrogen is on the experimental stage. That if you really successfully execute over a period of time, your dependency on the fossil fuel goes. Railways moving away from diesel engine and having the electric locos and electrification all across again goes in that direction. So electric vehicles is again is part of the same equation. Now when it comes to batteries, the renewables are available, solar especially during the day. So what you need to do over a period of time, not only provide batteries in the EV vehicles, but also spread those batteries across the grid so that when the renewables are generating energy, you are able to store that energy for the night and you put it into the grid. If there is a deficiency of the power, these batteries can back them up. So it's not only the EV side, but also the battery storage is going to be a big segment and quite a significant segment in future. So different components will play for the energy security. You will have solar, wind, hydro, then you have the battery storage and hydrogen. They will play a mix so that they can have a significant impact on dampening down the fossil fuel, and also same thing is connected into the sustainability strategy, whatever is agreed in the COP26 and the commitments we have made to reduce the GHG emissions in the country. Yeah.
I was reading some data points that the infra spending is happening, but within the infra spending, household infra spending is taking a big leap, or the growth is much more faster. And can you give us some idea of how it's moving, and especially automation and household technology, which is playing a big role in this household infra?
So I would say in the infrastructure space and also in the industries, one new big theme is, apart from energy transition, energy efficiency is a big theme. Because I think one data point is that anything that we produce in this country, it uses 30% more energy relative to some other places. So that means the component that we use to convert the grid energy into machine energy, I think we are not using efficient components. So that's one large space, be it how the energy efficient motors, the drives, and also the automation of the buildings that we do. You should know that about 70% of the buildings which will exist in 2030 are yet to be built. So if you continue to build the buildings the way you do today, potentially you will use more energy. But if you use automation and do a lot of sensorization in that building, one is it will be much more better for the humans, but at the same time, it can consume 30% less energy. So that's another area of transition which is happening on the commercial side of the buildings as well as on the residential side of the building.
Madhu, what kind of multiplier effect it can have?
So you can see the multiplier, whether you see the demand of steel, or you will see the demand of cement, or whether you see the demand in the digital side. I think that is very, very clearly visible, because the capex in that sense is the biggest multiplier for the economy. So when you build a road, you just don't build a road. You consume cement, you consume steel, you employ people who in turn go and spend. So that, I think, that's how the whole economy actually gets momentum. And I would just like to revisit my point that even if you are comparing yourself to 2004 and 2008-9 cycle, we have just begun. And qualitatively, this cycle, in my opinion, will be far more superior than what we experience in any cycle in India in terms of capex.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today and giving your insights. Thank you.